The Thompson 6000 for me is a very mixed bag. On one hand, I really like using the weapon as it is a challenge to use and brings a very interesting playstyle to the engineer. However, I can also understand why people hate and meme this weapon. On paper, the Thompson 6000 has a very respectable set of stats that make the weapon sound pretty awesome. But you very quickly begin to notice the deal-breaker once you begin shooting the Thompson. When I first fired the Thompson, I was immediately disappointed, as the projectile is so slow to the point where enemies have time to react and take you out. This weapon is so inefficient that it is more effective to use your pistol for a better DPS. I haven't even mentioned any of the other downsides yet. The slower firing speed and reduced clip size are just the nail in the coffin, and reduce this weapon to a glorified huntsman with less damage. And even though the weapon has many upsides, all are pretty situational and do not suit the engineer's role. This weapon is a 1 out of 10 on the practicality scale, and a 4 out of 10 for the fun scale, earning this weapon a total of 5 points. The syringe gun is another inaccurate, low-damage weapon. But this time, it's a bit more respectable. The syringe gun has an exceptional firing speed, which rewards you with similar DPS to an SMG as long as you hit your shots, and makes for an underestimated weapon in a desperate situation. Unfortunately for the syringe gun, it's simply outclassed by all of the other medic unlockable weapons, and often just using a melee weapon for damage is more effective anyway. It's worth mentioning that playing offensive as medic is useless at the best of times, even with the better weapon options like the Crusader's crossbow. This leaves the syringe gun forgotten in most cases. I do like the weapon though, as it is satisfying to get kills with it and yields a surprisingly valuable asset to your team if you spam the weapon in a highly contested area. Overall, the weapon has decent potential and is by far not the worst weapon in TF2, and is rather fun and interesting to play with. That's why this weapon deserves a 4 out of 10 on the practicality scale, and another 4 on the fun scale. Not too bad. The backscatter is a very situational weapon. You get mini crits for shooting people's backs. This is good because you surpass the 125 damage threshold, giving you the ability to one-shot light classes. However, 90% of the time you will not be in a situation where you will be able to shoot an enemy's back. And also you can achieve the same mini crit bonus with the crit O-Cola and use any other scattergun without any sacrifices like the backscatter has. Another deal breaker for most scouts is the reduced clip size from 6 to 4. With the crit O-Cola's existence, it barely makes sense to use the backscatter over any other weapon in Scout's arsenal. With all this being said, it is fun to use the weapon to flank and try achieve the mini crits. And a scattergun is still a scattergun, which means the backscatter can achieve high levels of damage and still hold its own in matchups. Most scout mains I talk to say the 20% less accurate stat makes the weapon more of a challenge and so makes the weapon more fun to use. However, I disagree and think it is just an annoying downside. Overall, I would say the backscatter is still good at its job but is just simply outclassed by more effective options. So this weapon gets a 6 out of 10 on the practicality scale and a 3 out of 10 for the fun scale. I will be honest, I do semi-enjoy using the classic as it is a refreshing and different way to play sniper. However, I will admit this weapon suffers from a major issue. The weapon cannot hit headshots unless the rifle is fully charged. This makes gameplay very slow and often only sees use in less active servers or when people are not taking the game seriously. The lower damage on body shot also makes the rifle not capable of one-shotting any light classes without waiting for the rifle to be fully charged to headshot. This forces the sniper to charge his shots and actually hit headshots to be effective at all. This is one of few weapons that actively punish you and reward you at the same time. The added perk of this weapon, however, is not needing to aim down sights to be charged, which increases your awareness and makes you less prone to getting unknowingly attacked and for you to react quicker. However, this upside makes you weaker in sniper 1v1s and encourages slower and methodical gameplay compared to other rifles. I will admit it is fun to use for around 20 minutes until someone switches to sniper and instantly destroys me because I can't do enough damage. It's best used as a surprise attack weapon. Overall, this weapon is a 2 out of 10 on the practicality scale, and a 3 out of 10 on the fun scale. Would not recommend to newer sniper players. The lock-and load is a very interesting concept. The lock-and load rewards you for hitting shots and punishes you for missing them. There is not much to talk about as the stats are mostly identical other than that the lock and load can only damage players on direct hit, has a reduced clip size to 3 grenades and features a faster projectile speed to make it easier to connect shots. The only major issue is that this greatly reduces the potential damage you can do and basically limits you to 100 damage at the best of times. There is still definitely a high skill ceiling with this weapon, but the loss of wide area damage really hurts the weapon's performance, and this reflects in Demoman players who use the lock and load, as I have noticed their gameplay is usually a lot more passive than stock grenade launcher users. However, this weapon is fun to use and is still very effective at destroying engineer nests. That's why this weapon gets a 6 out of 10 on the practicality scale and a 5 out of 10 on the fun scale. To me, the Liberty Launcher's stats are in between the stock rocket launcher and the direct hit. The Liberty Launcher sacrifices 25% of its damage, which really hurts because it lowers the damage from around 90 on direct hit to around 70 on direct hit with the Liberty Launcher. This damage penalty hurts splash damage even more, and massively affects soldier and demoman matchups. However, with that one downside, we gain a very fast 40% projectile speed, making shot connections easier. A blast damage reduction for rocket jumping, allowing you to escape certain death situations, and you get an extra rocket in the clip. For me, the Liberty Launcher performs better against Pyro as they will have to be more precise to airblast than usual. The Liberty Launcher is also one of the best launchers to use on medics and scouts as they will struggle to outrun the rocket. I really like the Liberty Launcher despite its bad reputation, and while not as effective as the regular rocket launcher, I think it's pretty underrated and fun to use. This weapon gets 6 out of 10 for the practicality scale, and 6 out of 10 for the fun scale. Not bad at all. The last weapon for today is the Enforcer. The Enforcer is often labeled as the worst spy revolver, however I don't really see why all that much. Sure, it fires 20% slower, but we are talking differences in the milliseconds, and hardly makes much a difference. The upsides are not all that exciting either, with a 20% damage bonus when cloaked, and a damage resistance invulnerability. This perk is good against medics who use the Vaccinata. This is sort of great as you can stop medics from pocketing a sniper, or stop a Vaccinata push in its tracks. While not game-changing, the Enforcer is a pretty valuable weapon for spies that make use of their revolver more than their knives. That's why the Enforcer deserves a 7 out of 10 for the practicality scale, and a 6 for the fun scale.